Hey Merle, would you like to go ring the dinner bell for us? You gonna ring the dinner bell for us? Arthur's got it. Oh no! All right, fair enough. I wasn't watching the booth. Are we live yet? All right, cool. We're live. Does that mean we have 100% participation in Bible study? I like that. That's good. Good morning, class. Welcome to our study of the book of Genesis. It is a book of increasingly more and more family drama, right? Well, it started off with kind of a bang, There was the conflict between Adam and Eve after the fall into sin. Then, of course, Cain and Abel. But time moves pretty swiftly through a lot of the book. We just get generations listed, from basically Seth down to just about to Moses, without much comment to it. Just, hey, so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so lived so many years, and then they had a kid, and then they died after so many years. That's basically the only stats recorded, isn't it? It's like, hey, they were born, they had a kid at this age, and then they died. Yeah, well, I mean, they're generally just tracking one line in the heritage. Sometimes you get multiple sons, but usually they're just tracking the one line. You can draw a straight line between Adam and Eve, straight down to Noah. And, as Christians, sometimes we'll joke about, hey, we're all related through Adam and Eve. That's true, but it also seems like we're also all related through Noah. So it's not quite as far back as Adam and Eve. So we talked a bit about the flood, and in some regards we talked about it prefiguring baptism, I think, as the wickedness of the world is washed away and new life is brought forth. We talked about the ark being a picture of the church. And I will continue to stand on until somebody has proven me wrong that the ark was not a boat. It was a box. It was Tupperware, basically. What's up? A coffin, in a sense, yeah. If you're going to go with the I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that because it was about preserving life. But man, we Christians have a weird relationship with death, don't we? Like, is it good or bad? Well, and it's not that we don't have opinions about it. It's not like we're like, well, it's neither. No, it's kind of both, actually. After the emergence off of the ark, again, family drama ensues pretty much right away. One son is pitted against the other two because he is disrespectful and dishonors his father. And so it is declared that he will not rule over the other two. Or rather, he will be ruled over by the other two. From Noah, again, we can draw a straight line, basically straight to Abram. We spent quite a bit of time with Abram and his family, Abram and Sarai, in particular, Lot and his wife, who I don't know if she's named. She's just called Lot's wife. So, much transpires in their lives. But the broad strokes, if we're going to try and get caught up to where we are, the broad strokes of Abram's story go something like this. As a retirement-aged human, he was still childless, and God said, it's time for you to move out of your parents' house. and go to the land that I will show you. It is, in fact, the land that his father was headed to, but his father stopped short. Right? Terah was headed to Canaan, but never got there. God leads Abram into Canaan, and he has a bit of mucking about. He goes to Egypt. He goes to some of the neighboring territories as well. He has a lot of adventures and misadventures with the locals. He chronically lies about his wife being his sister, although he tries to do the Obi-Wan Kenobi thing of like, so what I told you was true from a certain point of view. Like, no, you're just afraid, and you lied about your wife, and through that you brought immorality and the consequences of that upon two separate kings. I think it is interesting that these other kings seem to have some regard for Abram's God. Not that they worship him necessarily, but that they do fear his judgment, right? And in fact, in the case of Pharaoh, that judgment actually came, right? Like, people were rendered barren, basically, until the issue was resolved. Through his stay in Egypt, Abram also got really wealthy. Livestock, in particular, probably a lot of material, commodity wealth like clothes and gold and that kind of stuff. And then also servants. By the time Abram and Lot have emerged from Egypt, they have fairly large staff, so much so that they're in conflict with each other. And that's why Abram and Lot go separate ways. Abram goes out into the wide open of possibility, and Lot runs to the comfort and security of civilization. That's not to say that civilization itself is bad. However, he was immersing himself in cultures that had no regard for the God of Adam and Eve, Terah, Noah, Abram. Right? So Lot settles near Sodom. Abram goes off into his own open spaces. He digs wells and makes altars, does all kinds of stuff. And he flourishes. He eventually hears about a big regional conflict. 9 different kingdoms are at war with each other. Now, I do want to put a pin in this real quick. It's difficult to say what we mean by kingdom, right? I think that we talked about kings and kingdoms then. The scale probably isn't the same as what you would think about today. Is that? Yeah, oftentimes we're talking about city-states, right? So a large fortified city and then maybe the surrounding countryside. But not like, and as United States citizens or residents, we probably have a very skewed view of this. Because when we think about a country, it's pretty near a whole continent. We share it with Mexico and Canada, both also pretty vast. People from Europe, when they come to visit here, I'm told, often don't understand this. They're like, well, maybe we'll go to Epcot on Tuesday, and we'll go to the Alamo on Wednesday, and we can maybe squeeze in, go into, the world's largest McDonald's in Oklahoma. Like, no, you're not. You're not doing that. So, I think when we think country, we think of these vast things. And if you're in Europe today, going from country to country is basically like going state to state in New England. I mean, it's not a difficult thing to do. And that's with our modern transit. So back in biblical times, especially this ancient biblical stuff, because remember, the Bible spans thousands of years. Okay, this ancient biblical stuff, it's probably not, if you look at Egypt on a map today, It's probably not exactly what we're talking about. Probably more centered around, the Nile and the areas there. Um, Anyways, there are these 9 kingdoms. They're at least cities, but kingdoms at war. One involved is Sodom, and Lot gets caught up in that as collateral damage. And when Abram gets word of that, he hustles up 300 of his servants, and they go liberate him. And they don't do it covertly. They do it by conquering the army that had taken them captive. When Abram left the house of his father, I don't think he had an army with him. By the time he left Egypt, he basically did. Right? I mean, 300 is not a huge army, but, that's not an insignificant number of people. And those were just the able-bodied fighters he had amongst his servants. I mean, there would have been more than that, probably. And still, he and Sarah have no baby. The promise gets reiterated over and over again. I will make you a great nation. You'll have descendants as numerous as the stars, if you can count them, which you can't. But it's not happening. So eventually, Sarai says, God promised that to you, not me. So why don't you take another wife? Maybe this Hagar, servant of mine, why don't you take her? She's probably good at making babies. And then you can jumpstart this covenant. And Abram says, sure. And he takes Hagar to be his wife. But by reading the story, you can tell both Abram and Sarah don't take her to be an equal wife. They definitely still treat her like she is secondary to Sarai. Did this need to happen? Probably not. Was it a good idea? Definitely not. Abram and Hagar have a son, and his name is Ishmael. And Hagar makes life miserable for Sarah, but Sarah is also making life miserable for Hagar. And eventually, she's sent away. God promises to watch over Ishmael and to bless him, but he is going to be a wild donkey of a man and prone to conflict and will not have harmony with Abram's son, Isaac, through whom the promise will be reckoned. The miraculous child of, was she 90 when Sarah had Isaac? Something like that. It is through Isaac that the covenant is reckoned. And that was promised to Abraham and Sarah. God said, no. By the way, can I just, for a moment, there are people who will read the Bible as it is, noting how much it focuses on male characters and using male pronouns in places, and will say it's a misogynistic book. It doesn't recognize the equal validity of women or whatever. First off, no. But secondly, I think it's interesting that that's kind of how Sarah was about the covenant to Abram. Right? You're his wife. God says, I will give you descendants. And Sarah is like, well, he didn't say it to me personally. But God's perspective is like, y'all are married. It's you. So then he does tell her, yes, even you are part of this covenant too. So anyways, Isaac is born, and there's, of course, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and Lot escapes that with his daughters, and they settle elsewhere. Lot's wife does not make it out. The daughters Um, fiancés don't make it out. It's it's sort of a mixed tragedy story. Um, Isaac grows up. He's a young man, and God says, "Well, Abram, it's been a good run. Time for you to sacrifice your son to me up on the mountain." And we've talked about that story enough, probably, in that it both sort of prefigures Christ in God the Father sacrificing his own beloved, only begotten Son, but also it sort of shows us the story from the other side too, as we are, um, like Isaac, destined for death, but then there is a sacrifice who takes our place, and we are rescued from death. Right? Eventually, Sarah dies, and Abram's still around, and he realizes, Isaac needs a woman in his life since his mom is gone now. And so he arranges for Isaac to marry a good girl from back home. The servant goes, there's a whole thing about him praying about it and seeking a woman with a servant's heart. And that's Rebecca. And he brings Rebecca back, and Isaac and Rebecca are wed. And it's lovely. It's beautiful. And then they takes them a long time to have children. And when they do, they have twins. Their names are Esau and Jacob. I was pretty sure somebody was going to say Jacob and Esau, which is how we normally say it. It's kind of weird because that's reversed their birth order, but they were born so close together. Jacob grabbing Esau's heel. And I offered a few interpretations as to what that might mean. Not to say that it didn't actually happen, because I think it did actually happen, but what goes along with that. Esau will reference Jacob's name in the narrative. He's like, well, this is why they call you Jacob, why they call you heel grabber. God tells, because it's a very active pregnancy, shall we say. And Rebecca's kind of concerned about this, and she prays to God. And what God says is, you've got two sons in there. They're going to contend with each other. The younger will rule over the older. Now, as somebody who likes speculative fiction and science fiction and fantasy and all that kind of stuff, time travel stories always have that question of, okay, did the time traveler make the events happen because they went back in time or whatever? The same thing happens to prophecy sometimes. It's like, have you all seen Macbeth? Play Macbeth? It's by William Shakespeare. People say it's good. It's been around for a few hundred years, so, it starts early on with a prophecy, I guess, or an augury by these three witches who tell Macbeth some things that are going to happen. One of the questions that you can ask yourself as you watch the play is, did these things happen because he was told those things and then he made them happen? Or were they just telling him what was always going to happen? And it's it's one of those things that you can just kind of ponder about. It makes the experience a little bit more interesting. But that's all fiction. This really happened, but it does kind of, I do kind of wonder, do things happen the way they happen because God has seen what's going to happen and is just telling her? Or is hearing what she heard from God, does that change how she behaves? I don't know. But there is conflict between Jacob and Esau from the get-go. They come out as very different children, The description of Esau to me sounds like an orangutan. He's red and hairy, or he might be hairy with red hair, but like very hairy. Like you need goat skin to compare to his hairiness, right? But he's presented as a very macho, masculine kind of character, um, whereas Jacob more gentle, smooth-skinned, more domestic. The first real story we get about Jacob and Esau after their birth has Esau, who is a proficient hunter, coming home after a long day of hunting, and he's hungry, and Jacob sells some stew to him for the low, low price of his birthright. Okay, first off, it is not a kind and loving thing to sell dinner to your brother who's hungry after being out in the wild all day. Also, I've got no context for the story really. I don't know what these guys are like. Like, is dinner just miserable every day? Like, does Esau come in and treat Jacob like garbage because, he's at home cooking while Esau's out there doing the man things? I don't know. That's just me, imagining. It's not in the text. But however it works out, Esau gladly and willingly sells his, gladly is probably not the right term, but he willingly, hastily sells his birthright to his brother for a bowl of stew. To which I might say, yeah, probably not the guy that should be in charge of the family estate. Like, not a good investment, man. Not a good investment. What's that? It is sibling. Well, it's sibling rivalry for sure. So on the one hand, it's like Jacob's behaving in a dishonorable way, I think. But at the same time, Esau is demonstrating that he is not leadership material. He's mad about this after it's all over. But part of me has to say, yeah, but dude, you just willingly did this. Like, your response was, well, what good is a birthright to a guy who's going to die of starvation? Bro. Let's fast forward a little bit, and we get to Isaac. No, not too far. Esau gets a couple wives for himself amongst the local Canaanite women. And I don't know in what regard or why, not described to us. However, the facts we are given is, and they made life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah. You'll remember, Abraham did not want Isaac to marry any Canaanite women. Esau goes out. And again, I think this might be an indication of that sort of impulsiveness, that sort of lack of discernment and restraint. There are many beautiful and charming women in the world. Some have good character, some do not. I don't know why Esau married who he married, but I imagine there was no sifting through character before it happened, right? So these Canaanite women are making life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah. Which brings us into our next leg of the story and just about catches us up to where we left off. Isaac is getting older. His eyesight's failing, and he is realizing it's time to get my affairs in order. Right? This is somewhat like a last will and testament, but that's the way we do it in our culture. What he says instead is he gathers in Esau and he says, Esau, I'm going to die soon. I don't know when. So I would like to give you my blessing before that happens. So go hunt me up some food, bring it back, and then I'll offer my blessing to you. And Esau says, yes, sir, heads on out. But Rebekah has heard about this. And she grabs Jacob and says, we have an opportunity, but we have to move fast. You're going to go pose as your brother Esau and get that blessing. And they go out and take from the herds, and they slaughter from the herds, prepare a really nice meal. He dresses in Esau's clothes, and from the goat that they killed to eat, they made some coverings for his arms and the back of his neck, so that if Isaac touches him, it'll feel like Esau. Jacob goes in with the meal, clothes, fuzzy arms. Says, it's me, Esau. I'm here for my blessing. And Isaac's like, whoa, that was fast. How did you find and hunt something so fast? And there was a question about this last week, and I think I have an answer looking into what we'll cover this week, maybe next week. The response was, the Lord your God has given me success. Now to me, that's not blasphemy. It's at the very least using the Lord's name in vain and bearing false testimony. Which is bad enough when you're misrepresenting your brother, but he's brought God into it now. This is to me, it seems pretty spiritually severe. The question that came up last week was, he says the Lord your God. He doesn't say the Lord our God. And because of events that will happen shortly, I think he meant your as your and not our. We'll talk about that. But maybe he is a little bit more cavalier talking about Isaac's God because he doesn't really claim Isaac's God as his own. We'll see. Anyways, Isaac recognizes that the voice is wrong, but everything else seems right. He smells right because of the clothes. He feels right because of the fur. Food smells really good. He has all the right answers. So he blesses him. And that's the part that we left off last week. So that's where we're going to pick up again. So this is in Genesis chapter 27. We're going to come back to verse 24. I'll go forward from there. Actually, verse 22. So Jacob went near to Isaac, his father, who felt him and said, the voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. He did not recognize him because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed him. He said, are you really my son Esau? He answered, I am. Then he said, bring it near to me, that I may eat of my son's game and bless you. So he brought it near to him, and he ate. He brought him wine, drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, come near and kiss me, my son. So he came near and kissed him, and Isaac smelled the smell of his garments, and blessed him, and said, "See, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed." Pause on that for just a second. There's something interesting about this. Just a small, short science aside. You can describe things visually by analogy, right? You could say, well, it's brighter or darker, or it's shiny or it's dull, it's got a reddish hue to it or a bluish hue. You can use all those descriptors, right? Have you ever tried to describe smells? It's very different. Mostly, we have a few words like pungent or acrid or sweet. But mostly, and you'll see this in people who do like wine tastings and cheese tastings and coffee tastings and whatever else, right? They'll say, oh, it's got hints of blueberry, earth, or leather, or what, There's no leather in your wine unless something really bad happened. But it was like, oh, when I taste that, I taste that. The reason why is because smell and taste are chemical analyses. Like your body this is why we don't have smell-o-vision, right? We can digitally reproduce sights and sounds. But smell and taste are things that are chemical analysis. It's about as close to experiencing reality as you can get. I just think that's interesting, that like the final test for Isaac was actually smell. He's like, yeah, kind of. Like it's like, oh well, if the smell's right, then it's the genuine thing. And from a human experience, that's pretty good actually. Although a lot of us don't experience the world quite like that. All right, moving on. Verse 28. May God give you the dew of heaven and the fatness of the earth and plenty of grain and wine. Let peoples serve you and nations bow down to you. Now, so far, so good. I think this blessing could have been offered equally to both brothers, really. There's no real conflict of interest if that were to happen. However, be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. That's where the conflict hits, to me, primarily, right? We, in our culture today, we definitely have the opinion that, like, you're not supposed to have favorite children. I love you all equally. And, like, as your pastor, I'm supposed to love you all equally. I don't know if I'm capable of that, but I'm going to try. You do get bonus credit in my heart if you're here at Bible study. But I mean, realistically, I'm not going to have the same relationship with everybody in the church. That's not possible. But in these biblical times, it seems like there's no assumption that you're supposed to do that at all. You could just have a favorite, and you just lavish on the favorite. That seems like a recipe for trouble to me. Certainly not how God runs his family. I mean, if he has a favorite, it's Jesus, but everybody else is on an equal footing, and he loves you so much that he traded Jesus for you. So what does that mean? All right, be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow to you. I don't know that you have to do that. Okay, cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you. Now, that's a pretty good one. Right? And that sort of a blessing encourages healthy relationships with neighbors, But here's the thing. He just pitted his sons against each other. And then he said, cursed be anyone who curses you. Who do you think is first in line to curse Jacob right now? Probably Esau, right? Gosh darn it. Isaac, come on. As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, when Jacob had scarcely gone out from the presence of Isaac his father, Esau his brother came in from his hunting. I love that, like the timing of this is almost cinematic, you know? It's like the tent flap closes and opens again. Jacob's like taking little things off his wrists, right? Esau came in from his hunting. He also prepared delicious food and brought it to his father. And he said to his father, "Let my father arise and eat his son's game, that you may bless me." His father Isaac said to him, "Who are you?" He answered, "I'm your son, your firstborn Esau." Then Isaac trembled very violently and said, "Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? And I ate it all before you came, and I've blessed him. Yes, and he shall be blessed." As soon as Esau heard the words of his father, he cried out, and an exceedingly great and bitter cry came and said to his father, "Bless me, even me, O my father." But he said, "Your brother came deceitfully. He's taken away your blessing." Esau said, "Is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has cheated me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he has taken away my blessing." Then he said, "Have you not reserved a blessing for me?" Isaac answered him and said to Esau, "Behold, I have made him lord over you, and all his brothers I have given to him for servants. With grain and wine I have sustained him. What then can I do for you?" You know, when I read this story, this almost feels like magic. You know? Well, I cast the spell and I can't uncast it. I used up all my power on him. And when you read the story, it's easy to go, "It's interesting. Is that how it works?" I kind of wonder if it's not how it works, but it's how he thinks it works. From where does the blessing come? Does it come from within Isaac? Who actually is doing the blessing here? What's that? God. That's right. At the end of service today, when I stand up and say, "The Lord bless you and keep you, the Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you," like, he will do those things. But not because I have magical luck powers to impart to you. Because God has power that he gives. And I can't help but wonder if this dichotomy is built up in Isaac's mind because he doesn't understand the heart and generosity of God. He doesn't understand how God can bless Ishmael as well as Isaac. How God can love and protect Cain as well as flourishing the line of Seth. You know what I'm saying? I think God's bigger than Isaac thinks he is. And I just wonder what would happen if instead of going, I already used up my blessing, I'm sorry, man. If he had just given a similar blessing to him. The only problem, as I pointed out earlier, is part of that initial blessing was literally pitting son against son. Which was a dumb thing to do, I think. I mean, I'm here thousands of years later judging the man. I don't have all the context and whatever, but like, as a guy reading the story, I don't see why he had to say, all your brothers will serve you. And, like, that's not a thing you have to do. Unless he's trying to circumvent what God had said to Rebekah earlier. And if that's the case, then he really, really doesn't understand where the power for blessing comes from and who God is. I've said this before as we've been reading through the story of Abraham, and I want to reiterate that in Isaac, and we're going to get it definitely again in the life of Jacob. I think we tend to think about these men as being fully formed people with like full theologies and rock solid faith. And what I think we actually get as we read the story is people who are growing in faith over the course of their lives and growing in knowledge and understanding of who God is through all that time. By no means are they fully formed at the beginning of the story. They are all kind of knuckleheads and maybe even swindlers and con men in the case of Jacob, right? So there's going to be a process of them growing in grace and growing in knowledge and growing in faith. That's all going to be the unfolding story, and that's good. It's good that we don't, because if they're supposed to be just like instantly enlightened and instantly perfect, faithful believers who don't make mistakes and whatever, then it's really hard to relate to their stories. And it's really, really hard to see how any of that, what does that have to do with me, But if we start to see these people as humans with failings and shortcomings and misunderstandings and room to grow, and then a patient and loving God who's there to nurture that growth, I think we get a lot more mileage out of these stories. Yeah. Isaac never had that renaming thing, but yeah, Jacob, and it's going to be a few weeks before we get to the renaming of Jacob, but I think that's good too, and would amplify the point I'm making here even more. So maybe we'll revisit it later. All right. So here's what Isaac actually does, though. Right? Esau said to his father, "Have you but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O father." And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. Then Isaac, his father, answered and said to him, by the way, before I get into this, it's an interesting picture that's painted of Esau because in every story, we see a guy who is physically powerful and, seemingly very masculine, but also emotionally fragile. I'm not saying this isn't cause for mourning. I'm just saying the only pictures we've had of Esau are him, like going to 11 emotionally. Then Isaac answered and said to him, "Behold, away from the fatness of the earth shall your dwelling be." For a hunter, that's not what you want to hear. Away from the fatness of the earth shall your dwelling be, and away from the dew of heaven on high. By your sword you shall live, you shall serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you shall break his yoke from your neck. So you can see Isaac's trying to kind of put a loophole in that other blessing. He'll lord over you, but when you're done with that, you can get free. Interesting too. So he was a hunter, which, people who put animals on the same level as humans would say is morally equivalent, but it's not morally equivalent. So a man who's used to killing as his way of making a living, I guess, providing for himself and his family, now is no longer going to be a hunter, but a soldier or a warrior or a mercenary, something like that. Which is like a darker amplification of the same thing, I guess. Um, but yeah, so when you grow restless, you can break free. Now, Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, "The days of mourning for my father are approaching. Then I will kill my brother Jacob." Consider this with me for a moment. If you are Lord over another person or group of people, do you want these people hating you? What will probably happen if they hate you? Rebellion, right? So this is not a good situation. But the words of Esau, her older son, were told to Rebekah. Hang on a second. You mean to tell me that Esau wasn't just thinking, well, I'm going to wait until I'm done mourning dad and then I'll kill my brother? He's actually talking about it with people? Could I just tell you, not leadership material. Unless he's like looking for somebody to talk him down, talk him out of it. I don't think that's the case. If anything, I wonder if he's kind of bragging a little bit, trying to preserve his own save face. So she went, and so she sent and called Jacob, her younger son, and said to him, "Behold, your brother Esau comforts himself about you by planning to kill you." That's like it, vaguely psychopathic, right? Like, you know what soothes me at the end of the day? It's thinking about when I kill my brother. Now, therefore, my son, obey my voice. Arise, flee to Laban, my brother in Haran, and stay with him a while, until your brother's fury turns away, until your brother's anger turns away from you. He forgets what you have done to him. Then I will send and bring you from there. Why should I be reft of you both in one day? That's a compelling argument. When my husband dies, I don't want to lose a son on the same day. Then Rebekah said to Isaac, so she's had her private conversation with Jacob. Now watch this, because this is going to sound unrelated. It's not unrelated. Pay attention, right? She says, I need you to go to Laban, okay? Rebekah goes and talks to Isaac, and here's what she says. I loathe my life because of the Hittite women. Remember, she's got 2 living in her house right now, and so it's awful. I loathe my life because of the Hittite women. If Jacob marries one of the Hittite women like these, one of the women of the land, what good will my life be to me? You understand what she's doing here? Where's Rebekah from? Yeah, back home, let's just say, right? Why did she come here to marry Isaac? Because Abram didn't want Isaac to marry any of the local girls. Isaac knows this story. He gets it, and it's presumably worked out well for him. So she's putting in his mind the idea, we need to get Jacob a wife from back home. Who else is back home? Her brother, Laban. I don't think any of this is coincidental. I think she's being subtle and manipulative and trying to get it to be Isaac's idea. When it's your idea, you don't argue nearly as much. So I'm going to give you the first verses of the next chapter. This is one of those places where I think the chapter break falls in a weird place. Because it's like they're not really reading the context or understanding the flow here. By the way, chapters and verses were not in the original writings of the Bible. Those were an invention only several hundred years ago, really, with the intention of making it easier to find passages in the Bible. Nothing wrong with it, but it's also not part of the divine, inerrant thing. So just bear that in mind. So I'm going to read you a little bit more. Then Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and directed him, "You must not take a wife from the Canaanite women. Arise, go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and take as a wife from there one of the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother." That works out really nicely, doesn't it? Isaac, you need to escape to Laban's house. Jacob, you need to escape to Laban's house. Isaac, I've been thinking about our son. He needs a wife, but none of these wives. Do you have any recommendations? Maybe we could send him back to Laban's house. Brilliant, honey. You're so smart. I love this idea. A lot of manipulation going on. Well, things moved at a slower pace for sure. Yeah. All right, I need to wrap it up there. We got church coming up in about 8 minutes, so we'll just do chapter 28 and move forward from there next week. Stick around. We got church in 7.5 minutes.